Hi everyone, I hope you're having a great day and welcome to week 4 for the Help for All sprint. So last week, we explored actually meeting your users and learning the different methods you can use to get the information you need to improve your solution. Now that you've gotten to understand your users and their needs in more depth, it's time to take action with your findings, and the next step is really developing a basic version of your solution that you can use to get even more feedback from your users. You're going to learn about prototyping and how you can use this process and several techniques to get important feedback from your users. We're going to start by defining some terms because things can get a bit confusing if we don't. So first off is the term prototype. So a prototype is an early sample of your solution that is modeled to test out and validate a particular property or concept of your solution. So the key idea here is that a prototype is meant to test a single property of your solution. For example, pretend your final desired product is a lightweight eco bicycle. You may prototype the handles done and see if your users find them comfortable to grip. And that's what it's meant by testing only a property of your solution. You don't need to present the entire bicycle. So the second term is prototyping. And prototyping is the process of using a prototype or a minimal viable product to gather feedback from users to improve your solution. So this is similar to what we did in week 3, but this time with a prototype for your users to interact with. Now the third term is minimum viable product or MVP. An MVP is a version of your solution with a minimum amount of features necessary to satisfy your early users and start the learning feedback loop. So the key idea here is that an MVP is meant to test your entire solution in its simplest form. So if I use the example of a lightweight eco bicycle again, an MVP could be a simple bicycle made of bamboo. It may not have the best wheels or handles or be the most lightweight or comfortable, but it fulfills the basic purpose of, number 1, being made of sustainable material, and number 2, getting the users from point A to point B on a bicycle. And you can simply get feedback from your users to see what features of the solution you'd need to improve or rethink to satisfy them. So to sum things up, a prototype is simply used to prove that a property of your solution is feasible. An MVP is used to prove that your entire solution can provide value, and to prove this using as few resources as possible. Which brings us to why prototyping is useful. It's simply the best way to improve your solution with the least amount of time and resources used, while generating the highest quality of feedback and concrete proof that your solution works. Whether you develop an MVP or a prototype depends on the stage of your solution and social enterprise, and what your goals are really. In general, a prototype is best for very early stage products with no proof of concept, while an MVP is best for products that have already developed a few samples and run a few experiments with users. So how do you actually prototype? There's 5 steps to it. Defining your hypothesis, building your prototype, defining your test scenario, actually testing your prototype with users, and learning and analyzing the feedback. So if you notice, it's exactly like running a little science experiment. For this week, we'll only be covering steps 1 to 3. So you can look at this week's booklet for an in-depth tutorial on the first 3 steps of the process, but let's go over them conceptually. So the first step, defining your hypothesis, it's all about knowing what factors you want to prove or disprove in order to improve your solution. So this really involves taking your solution or an aspect of it and guessing how it will affect a certain target audience or user base. Once you know that, you have to decide on what form your prototype needs to take in order to get feedback from your users. You also need to take into account how your users will interact with your solution. Again, before you actually test it, you need to be able to figure out how to get a hold of the right users to test with to actually come up with reliable results. Now let's look at the canvases we'll be using this week to help you reach your goals.
So you have 3 canvases for this week. I know it's a lot, so let's break it down one by one. Let's start with the first one on defining your hypothesis. For what do I want to test, you can list out a few important things on your mind to test and pick out just one to answer the rest of the questions for. So once you've done that, you can go to the next part, which is the how might we rephrase. So the point of rephrasing it into a how might we format is to get into a solution-focused mindset. So let's say you want to test out how to increase the number of your users. You can phrase it as, how might we attract new users to our service and retain them? It might sound a little subtle, but I'm sure you can see the difference. After writing your brainstorm solutions, you can finally come up with your hypothesis. So to use the example again of increasing your number of users, you can fill this in as, we believe that offering referral rewards for our existing customers will bring us X number of new users. So that's just one example. Look to the booklet for more examples and in-depth explanations. So for the second canvas, defining your MVP, things might sound a bit tricky, but they're not. For desired output, you simply want to describe how you imagine your users interacting with your prototype. Are they at a computer, or holding a physical thing, or maybe having a conversation? What would be the ideal way for your users to react to your prototype? Go ahead and get a bit detailed. Next, you need to define your target and prototype. We gave a few examples of prototypes in the booklet, but there are definitely so much more than that. You can do a deep Google search dive to gain some inspiration. Your answers for this part of the canvas should be quite detailed. What form will the prototype be in? What will the user experience be? How will you set it up? Things like that. Once you've planned out your prototype, you can move on to the next step, which is planning your acquisition channel, or how you're going to gather users to test your prototype on. While the first two fields, objective and audience, are quite straightforward, the third, channels, is interesting because your user demographic will have a preferred channel and you will want to meet them where they're at. For example, if you're targeting businesses, LinkedIn might be a good channel to engage them. But if you're targeting local communities, then you most likely will have to coordinate with them completely in person. So that's what it is, channel, simply a way for you to reach your audience. Indicators is also an important field, and you want to be specific here too, perhaps with attaching numbers to it. So for example, you can put an indicator for success is booked user interviews with 3 small businesses. While the number is completely up to you to decide, it should tell you when you're done collecting info for this particular prototyping session. The rest of the fields are here to help you articulate the content and delivery of your communication. So that's the voice and tone of your message, the message that you want to convey, the material you need to convey it, and the dates that you plan to relay everything.
So everyone, that's it for week 4. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you learned something today that'll help you develop your social enterprise one step further. As always, please don't forget to schedule a call with your mentors and your buddy, and good luck developing your MVP, and I'll see you again next week in another video.